Hello, welcome everyone to today's podcast, The Engineer Whisperer. Super excited to have you back today because today I'm super excited to sit down with my guest. Kubilay, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yes, thank you for saying yes. And as we start, give us a little intro about you.
I'm Kubilai. I'm a civil structural engineer. I've worked for a number of years in a number of countries, and I have a specialism in earthquake engineering.
Well, thank you. And that's what got me so curious when I met you via LinkedIn. How does one become and get specialized in this kind of engineering? So I wanted to invite you here so that you share your story with us. So tell me, how did you?
Sure. I suppose there are many ways in which you can become an engineer and a civil structural engineer or a seismic earthquake engineer. In my case, I had studied civil engineering in the University of Glasgow, and I started work. And then I had a presentation by one of my colleagues, and it was about earthquake engineering. And it was interesting to see how things perform at the extreme.
That's true.
And earthquakes are extreme events. They don't happen often. When they do, they don't last very long, but they seem to have quite an effect on the built environment and communities and lives. And as a result of it, my path was to then go back to university and do an MSc in earthquake engineering and structural dynamics.
So take me
And
back. What inspired you to even get on the path of becoming an engineer?
uh, sure, I had actually originally applied to do medicine at university. And before going to university, I had a year out where I was doing volunteer work in a rural community in southern Africa. And I suppose it became, to my sense, clear that a lot of issues were not necessarily medical, that a lot of it was basic civil engineering, basic engineering. I mean, you know, getting access to town on a rainy day was difficult. There was a 30-minute opportunity, by which time I would have to leave if it was raining, because after 30 minutes, one of the slopes on the hills became too slippery for the car to drive up. So but it was a dirt road, so there was a short window, and it was basic infrastructure. And if it rained for a period of time, you couldn't go to town and you couldn't get supplies. Communications was poor. Nobody had electricity generally, and sanitation was poor. And in lots of parts of the world, sanitation is poor. It's a civil engineering challenge. It's a clean water supply, clean treatment of grey water and black water. Grey water and black water is basically polluted water of some description. And once we solve those with a bit of hand washing and soap, suddenly lots of things get solved, and chronic dysentery, diarrhea, stops becoming a dominant feature. Child mortality reduces. And actually, a lot of that is engineering. And uh, in earthquakes, when it hits a community, tens or hundreds of kilometers get impacted, and every building, every other building suffers damage or can suffer damage, depending on the quality of the buildings. And it has quite lasting, profound changes on communities and societies. And I think I concluded that maybe I could have more impact as an engineer. Whether that was a right choice or a wrong choice, I mean, that's for somebody else to decide. But so I switched to civil engineering.
That is so interesting. What was the response of others around you who were, I don't know, maybe also studying medicine or your friends, family, when you said, I'm gonna switch?
Um, I was quite autonomous in terms of looking after myself, so it was a decision I made myself. Uh, I switched when I got back to the UK because where I was in a rural community, The internet wasn't up and running. I got my letter of acceptance from the university 3 months after I should have replied to accept because postal
Oh,
network was slow.
I see.
So I dealt with the change once I was at university, and I went straight into the engineering course and did the engineering.
So hold on, you're how old at this time were you making these big
All right, that was
transitions?
18, 19,
It,
20. Yeah.
that's fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah, and I'm
That
still only 23, so it's not much time has gone past.
yes, yes. Well, I think these are important. I like to highlight these moments in our lives when we know that we have made these decisions and committed to something that then later on we find out, yeah, changed our lives. So yes, fascinating. So continue. So you decided that you're gonna switch majors and you started studying engineering. How was that transition for you from an
Well, I didn't.
educational
I
point of
never
view?
started in medicine. Yeah, I had the place at the university to
I
do
see.
medicine,
I
so
see.
I the switch was straight into civil engineering at the University of Glasgow. That was fine. I had a year out immediately, a year afterwards, where I got the privilege of doing world politics, philosophy, and Mandarin for a year. So I did that, and then I went back to finish my engineering degree.
Wait, did you travel somewhere? Did you go somewhere else to do that
Yes,
one
yes.
year?
I went to Freiburg in Germany.
So Africa, Germany. So then allow me to ask, the
Hmm.
spirit of traveling, getting out of your comfort zone, going, embedding yourself in different cultures, different languages with different traditions, was this something that was normal for you, or was that hard for you?
I suspect compared to many, it was more normal because as a child, I'd been brought up in a few countries. Uh, Parents are from two different countries, so used to speaking and learning a foreign language. I mean, there's a mother tongue that one doesn't remember learning. But if you learn a foreign language as a foreign language in a foreign country to you, where you are conscious that you can't speak it,
Mm.
um, I have already experienced that as a child. I had. So the idea that you might need to learn something new somewhere else was not that daunting.
Yeah, yeah, part of your
And
upbringing.
so from that point of view, I think it was not that difficult. The sense of adventure, I think that varies. Not everybody who has that upbringing then chooses to continue. Some people don't enjoy the change and the sort of upheaval, and you lose contact with people. And in the past, you genuinely lost contact with people. You didn't have social media, and physical
Yes,
writing was hard and
yes,
slow, and you couldn't just message. Uh, but
it's true.
there is a benefit to it in that it forces you to make relationships in the new places with the new people you are. Now you can choose to remain stuck in your old friendships because you can remain connected forever on
That's
social media, and maybe that's stopping us from, in some instances, from actually progressing and making more new connections or properly committing to a new adventure. And people tend to enjoy things they're good at, and you tend to get good at things if you spend time putting in effort and practicing and getting good at it. So,
so
I
you
mean,
like to step out of your comfort zone and go and meet people.
I'm not a extrovert, I don't think. I don't think it is comfortable or easy, but it's not something to be afraid of. Yes, I think, I mean, meeting new people, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes,
And
yes,
but not trying is choosing not to try. and indecision is choosing not to decide.
Yes.
And there are very many consequences of inaction.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
the worst thing that can happen by trying something is that you discover that maybe I didn't like this, or I'm not skilled, I just don't have the talent for this. But you do have the knowledge and privilege of knowing that, yeah, okay, I did test this, but this one isn't for me. But you know that it's no longer just an opinion.
Yes.
You have a bit of first-hand experience, but you can't give up too soon. Yeah, because sometimes just because you taste something new and you don't know what to make of it, it doesn't mean you don't like it. It's just very strange and f unfamiliar to you. So if you actually try something over and over again, with time, it is possible to learn to like something, especially as if one gets good at it or is able to. I mean,
What I hear is that you,
English is a language I now speak predominantly. It's the language that I practice most, but it's not my first language. And
what is your
but
first
initially
language?
it wasn't. It was Turkish.
Okay.
Um, but interestingly, I speak Turkish worse than English now because
Mm.
as an adult and all my adult life, it's been predominantly in English. But as you get better at it, it becomes easier.
Yes. Yes. I so appreciate you telling us about this intentional mm, travel and putting yourself in different places where we might be afraid of what will happen and how we're going to meet people. But then, as you said, there's something just filled with so much wonder in being in a place where you are um, you are free to show up the person that you want to show up, and you are free to show who you are right now to those who don't know you yet, versus from my life experience having friends who knew me from when I was growing up, and almost like it was harder for them, it was harder for me to show them that I have grown, that I have different skills, different experiences, a different mindset, because sometimes I was stuck in their mindset as a younger person. So having that opportunity to meet new people who didn't know me and then show my whole self to them, who I became, who I
Mm.
was in that moment. I found that fascinating and an amazing life experience. So that's what I'm hearing in your journey as well. All right, so you are at college, you took the year off, and then came back. And what happened next?
In terms of, I finished my civil engineering degree. I started work. I worked for a year. I went back to university and did a master's in science in earthquake engineering and structural dynamics, and then I went back to work. And at work, I've had the privilege of working on all sorts of different types of projects on bridges and buildings and stadiums and uh, various other things. And because I was interested in earthquake engineering, and after school, I had done a year of working for a charity in Southern Africa, in South Africa. Uh, I had always thought about maybe there's a post-disaster work or something. In 2005, 6, there was I think from memory, it was the 25th of October or November 2005. There was the earthquake in Kashmir in Pakistan. Um, just a second. It's the motion sensor. Um,
Thank
there was an earthquake there where, I don't know, 50, 60, 70,000 people died. And there was an Irish aid agency looking for somebody. And somehow we got in touch with each other. And then at short notice, I was asked to deploy. The place I work for was very supportive. Wife was supportive with a daughter and a little boy. And I went to Kashmir for 3 months, 4 months, supporting the aid agency with post-disaster help. And one of the things we did there was roll out earthquake engineering training village by village in rural communities. I don't speak Urdu, but I can point, I can indicate, and we hired a local engineer, and we did courses village by village. I had 40, 50, 60 trained carpenters, steel fixers, masons, shutterers, concreters, construction people come and attend the training, and it was with a view to help them reflect on why earthquakes happen and share with them why earthquakes happen. In English language, it's God's will. Uh, in Islamic countries, it's Qismet or whatever, which is again, it's just the way it is. But sometimes we're also capable of doing something about it. But people need to be shown what to do. Whether they do it or not, it's up to them. But in that rural environment, lots of people haven't learned through formal education. I mean, a number of people couldn't write their names down themselves, and they're not stupid. They know how to work with their
Yeah.
hands and build. And
Yes.
we went through details and we did that. So that was sort of a post-earthquake humanitarian effort. And I think there was something like 400,000 houses, dwellings got destroyed in the earthquake. There was a lot of reconstruction required. How to assist on that, and then back at work, some of it would be working on a airport terminal, doing vibration engineering in a first world environment, or working on a footbridge or a stadium dynamics, or there are different type of engineering challenges that need to be solved for people. Sometimes it is about doing the performance-based earthquake engineering to see if something how it is going to survive and how much it may get damaged or not during an earthquake. And from a engineering point of view, we are able to engineer things that perform better than others, but it costs money. And how do we detail it so that if things do go wrong, it probably happens in a predictable,
Yeah.
stable way rather than brittle and chaotic and unpredictable. I mean,
Yes.
cars when they're in car crashes, I mean, they get very heavily damaged.
Yes.
But the hope is that, or the intent of the design is that the car will form a cocoon around the occupants, and we've increased that by adding airbags and those things that will deploy at the detection of impact. So we are applying engineering solutions to help protect humans, and then in, cars, the next thing is how do you mitigate the harshness of an impact with pedestrians or cyclists, people who are in a more vulnerable mode of transport. And we can apply our engineering principles there. And, buildings or bridges, it's actually not much different. And there are choices there to be made.
The one would say, clearly, you are helping to save lives.
Uh,
Do you look at it that
may,
way?
may, 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 maybe. Sometimes I think it's indirect, sort of.
Right.
The earthquake places I've been to. I mean, I've been to Haiti in 2010. I've been to Nepal in 2015. I was in Kahramanmaraş in Turkey that was in 2023, February. And I mean, these events only take 10, 15 seconds. And they fundamentally
Yeah.
affect millions of people when they
For years to
happen, yeah,
come.
for
Yes.
years to come. And,
Yes.
one could argue that, for example, I think it's in 1755, there was a very large earthquake in that affected Lisbon in Portugal. So could the argument be made that as a seafaring nation, Lisbon never recovered after that earthquake because the trading routes rerouted?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
if we look in 1995, it was the Kobe earthquake in Japan.
Yeah.
Has Kobe, as a port city, recovered its position? I don't know the answer, but the engineering impact on society is 5, 10, 15, 20 years of construction. And if you are a business and you need a port to function, You
Yes.
can't wait for 15 years until everything is back up and running. So you reroute. And once you've rerouted, would you
Yes.
then pay for the money to go back to the old place? At that point, it probably becomes set in. It's just the way it is now, yeah? So
Yes.
it's no different than a large organization moving their headquarters. It's not a move you do every year. It's
No.
very expensive. It's very difficult. It affects everybody who works there, their families, their children, the schools, where they all go.
You know what I'm hearing in your voice, Kubilai? It's this very um hmm, very kind, caring feeling that you understand, and in a
Mhm.
humbling way, you know that what you do and your team and the people in this similar industry you collectively do does save lives indirectly, maybe saves them from being destroyed. And but what amazes me is the attitude, the mindset that you have around doing the work to save them, to get to that point of creating, a structure, a building, so on, that will withstand an earthquake. So I want to touch on this
Mhm.
mindset of how did you build this, and then how do you fuel this for yourself?
I mean, I suppose engineering at its loosest or sort of most philosophical sense. It's about engineering. Engineering is about creating.
Yes,
Yeah. So,
building.
so as engineers, we can create, and they are lasting objects. Yeah. So, I mean, engineering comes in different shapes and forms. If I create a light bulb and it burns out after 2000 hours, we expect it to be broken at the end of its design life. Whereas
Yes.
when we engineer the built environment, buildings and bridges, nobody expects their building to be broken after the design life of 50 years or 100 years or whatever.
No.
And in all societies, the best examples, and best is a funny, it's a sort of a difficult thing to describe, but something, the better examples tend to survive the test of time. And were they better because they were better engineered, or did they have better materials, or they were they looked after more?
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, you can have a
Yes.
poorly
Maintenance.
made, you can have a nice structure, but that it's not had any maintenance, and it may end up rotting and falling apart or
Yes.
disintegrating. You
Yes.
could have a wonderful poor structure in terms of it's very fragile, but society, for whatever reason, has paid it meticulous attention to look after it, and it remains. Um, so as engineers, we are capable of that. As society, we're capable of putting things together well or badly. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take, you can build a good house or a bad house using the same amount of materials. You can build a good house using the same amount of time as it takes to build a bad house.
So what you're saying, what the difference is the engineer who built it, is how the engineer builds it. That's what
It's
makes.
so it's more complicated than that. And what I mean by that is that I'm a an engineer in the sense of a consulting engineer. I generally sit in an office, do calculations and computer models, and write reports and prepare drawings, but I don't physically build.
Yeah.
But there is the execution side of it, yes. So in terms of, and it's our
Mm-hmm.
clients who
Yes.
purchase the materials and the contractors, and uh, is the base quality of the material sufficient for the purpose in hand? And are the craftsmen, the constructors, sufficiently skilled to put it together properly? It is, one of some of these large engineering projects, they take thousands of people to put together. Yeah, it is
Right.
thousands and thousands of pieces that need to become uh, assembled and joined up and lined up and leveled, and tolerance is taken out, and all of that is required to make a building or a stadium functional. And that's a huge collection of people. I mean, it's quite a sophisticated uh,
Yes.
assembly. And, an architect might have a nice idea, but you've got to execute it. And then the society has to embrace it. And not all architecture is embraced, not all engineering is embraced. But like, some people start a restaurant and nobody likes visiting it. And
Yes.
they don't work, but some do. And what is it on the ones that work? So as engineers, as skilled engineers, hopefully we are able to figure out how to get more of them to work.
By providing value. That's what I'm hearing as you were talking
That's what
about.
we hope.
Well,
I mean,
yes, and I'm gonna simplify it really down because
mm,
I was so inspired by what you said is the part where the if the society, the community treasures the structure, the building, then they maintain it. And I think we
mm,
maintain something when we value something. So I think it starts with you valuing what you do and caring about it and putting your all your talent and skills into it
mm,
because you value it and care. And then the builder puts, purchases the material and then built it with other, as you
mm,
said, thousands of people, and it is a chain reaction, and it's this amazing, I want to say, dance where it starts with you caring and wanting to add value, and then the builder, and then the thousand others who are. And when all of those people think that way, then this is what my experience is. Then the community then sees what has been created by engineers, builders, and thousands of others, and they're gonna value what has been built, and then they're gonna maintain it.
Well,
Isn't
there's no guarantee. So if I look at society, some societies choose no longer to maintain. Yep. And there are plenty of societies in the world where they have all the drainage systems in the world, but the drains are blocked with leaves and rubbish. So the engineering is there, but the possibly because it was there, people don't understand yet. They don't have first-hand experience of the consequence of what happens when you don't maintain what you already have.
yes.
So in which case society goes down a path of decay, and it is decay, and people literally do not spend the money on the simple things, which is maintenance. I mean, one of the cheapest ways to maintain infrastructure is to do maintenance. And if you don't do maintenance, things start rotting and going, they just start no longer functioning. Yes, but the problem is if you don't do maintenance, the cost of some of these civil engineering infrastructure is millions, if not hundreds of millions in any currency. It's large sums of money in any currency. And and then society finds out, oh, that's really expensive. So if we have to repair it, we spend huge amounts of money repairing all these potholes or whatever it may be. And then at the end of it, you only get back what you already had. You don't get any improvement. Yeah.
True.
And and,
Yes,
and
even
societies find
small,
and we
small
find
more.
that very, very painful. Whereas if I was in a city that didn't have a metro and we build a metro, you now have something that you didn't have.
How
That's always
interesting.
that's the more shiny packet opening the new toy. That's
Yes,
exciting, right? But
yes.
the cheapest thing for any
Mhm.
society is to invest in maintenance. But how often do people want to value maintenance?
Well, I hope that with this conversation, some people are gonna go, how can I start with valuing maintenance and how can I bring maintenance in everything that I do from a personal to a professional level, um, professional job. So you definitely inspired me as I'm listening to you of how I can build in more habits around maintenance. Uh, so thank you. So I love this idea of we mm, who's the we here? So and we engineers we build it, and we as the people who receive the engineers build
mm,
to be valued. And then one of the ways that we all can value what we have and what
mm,
engineers build
mm.
is by maintenance. Yeah,
I mean,
love it.
life is strange. For example, in the olden times, roads were engineered so that they formed a V with the water going towards the middle of the road.
So
So if there was, and the water would move away from houses. And nowadays, we tend to engineer it like this, with the water going to the sides of the road, because we put utilities and things, which I suppose in the past we didn't have. But when the rain becomes large or the drains are blocked, then the water moves towards property. So who was in the long term wiser? It's not always clear to me. Yeah, were they wiser in the past when they engineered the roads to dip? And maybe that was more feasible when you had small roads. Uh, some of the older construction materials last for hundreds of years. Some of the modern construction materials tend not to last for hundreds of years. And if you want sustainability and our products don't stop working at the end of their design life, what should we be investing in? And I asked that question having worked on a couple of landmark projects with sort of signature architects where the object is a sculpture. It may be a museum or it may be, but the architecture is the sculpture. And some of these projects, I've never met anybody who's talked to me about what they've seen inside the building. They only ever show me the pictures of the building. Yeah. So
Mm.
the piece of artwork is actually the building. And these are high quality buildings where material selection and engineering and materiality was carefully thought out and paid for. Yeah. And chances are those objects will be surviving because they are special and they are incredible and they become landmarks. And then the long-term question is, isn't that more valuable than a lot of the stuff we build and knock down after 30 years, 40 years, 50 years? So if you
Right.
think long term and you're thinking for your great grandchildren or something like that, what is the way to build so that the consumption is the least in the long term?
Oh, yes.
I think we're grappling with that in society, uh, but it's not always clear to me that um, quick and cheap
Yeah,
will end up with the long-term value to society.
you're bringing up that question of the benefits and then the downfalls of a short term and then long term thinking
Yeah,
for
sure.
sure.
But people also need to stay in business and make money, and uh, sometimes people have a shorter financial cycle time, and actually they do need to get this project up and running and lease out the units or sell the units or whatever because they've got borrowed money to build it. So they've taken risks, and if they don't bring it in economically enough, they're going to go out of business. And then the question is, how do we as engineers help that, or are we
Okay.
complicit in building cheap? Again,
Yes.
there's a dilemma there.
Yes. Yes. I
Uh,
mean, these are all great questions behind that. I I hope that our listeners are going to have an opportunity to discuss within their network and within their group of people that they're
mhm.
working with. And then if they are wanting to discuss it with you, would you be open to have them connect with you? And what's the
Yes,
best way to connect with you?
that'd be fine. I mean, I'm findable on LinkedIn, so that would be, I think, an easy way for people to
Great.
find me.
I will add, yes, your LinkedIn profile link to the show
Hmm.
notes. So
Hmm.
thank you very much for that. Well, as we're closing, I would like to give you the mic back to close us out. What is one thought, what idea that you want us to walk away with today?
Ooh, I think to build a compassionate, caring community society, it takes lots of skills and lots of different types of people. And, we may have trained in one specific aspect. Chances are we only are familiar with a narrow aspect of society. And, I suppose uh, it takes effort to have a civil society, and it's a worthwhile effort.
Oh, I love that. Well, on that note, thank you very much for being here, for
Well, thank you for
sharing.
having me.
Yes, it was a pleasure. Thank you.